"You want me for my body," she said. He whispered, "No. I want your fire, not your flesh." She had always been careful about the way she carried herself. From a young age, she noticed that people often treated her differently than they treated others. It wasn't just kindness or curiosity, it was something more complicated. People would compliment her appearance, her smile, or her style, but those compliments rarely came with understanding or respect. It was like they were praising only the surface of her, not the person underneath. She began to feel that people were more interested in what she looked like than who she really was. Over time, this shaped the way she looked at the world. She learned to be guarded. She learned to hide her vulnerability behind jokes, sarcasm, and a confident front. She learned to expect disappointment because she had seen too much of it in her life. Her past had given her plenty of reasons to protect herself. She had friends who turned out to be fair weather, family members who didn't always listen, and acquaintances who admired her outwardly but didn't care about her struggles.
It wasn't that she didn't want to connect with people, it was that she had learned to protect herself from the hurt that often followed trust. Every time she let someone in, she paid attention to whether their words matched their actions.
Every time she smiled or laughed, a small voice inside her whispered, "Be careful. They only want what they can take." Even as she grew older and more confident, that voice never went away completely. It didn't mean she didn't enjoy attention. She did. But she was always aware of the difference between attention that was shallow and attention that was genuine. She could sense the kind of interest that only sought what was visible. That's why she often kept people at a distance. She had learned to watch, to observe, and to ask herself quietly, do they see me, or do they see a version of me they want? This carefulness made her life feel lonely at times. She watched others around her form close friendships and relationships, seeming to trust without hesitation. She wanted that too, the feeling of being truly understood, but she didn't want it at the cost of being objectified, judged, or used. Her heart had learned to be cautious. She had learned to value herself and her fire, the energy inside her that drove her dreams and passions. But sharing that fire was risky because not everyone appreciated it. Some feared it. Some wanted to control it. Some just wanted to admire it from afar without ever supporting it. Then, one day she met him. He was quiet at first, unassuming in a way that made him easy to overlook. And yet there was something about him that made her notice. Unlike many people, he didn't look at her and smile only at her face. He didn't try to impress her with clever words or compliments about her appearance. Instead, he observed, not in a creepy way, but in a thoughtful way, like he was trying to understand her without asking for anything in return. He noticed the way her eyes lit up when she talked about something she loved, the way her hands moved when she was explaining an idea, and the brief moments when she looked away, lost in thought. At first, she assumed he was just another person who would eventually turn away. She had been disappointed so many times before that she expected the same outcome here. But there was a difference. He didn't push her to open up. He didn't try to break her walls down quickly. He simply existed in her space in a calm, patient way. That patience confused her. She was used to people who wanted quick results, who either pursued aggressively or lost interest. This quiet presence felt different, almost like it was a mirror reflecting her true self back at her without judgment. As they spent more time together, she found herself observing him too. He had a way of listening that was rare. He didn't just hear her words, he seemed to understand the emotions behind them. If she spoke about her work, her hobbies, or even a random thought, he paid attention in a way that made her feel seen. It was strange for her because she had learned to expect people to be distracted or self-centered. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't self-centered. He wanted nothing from her but her honest self, even if that self was complicated or messy. This was both comforting and unsettling. She wasn't used to people showing interest in her mind and heart rather than her appearance. It made her defensive at first. She tested him without meaning to. Sometimes she would ignore his messages for days just to see if he would leave. Sometimes she would respond with sarcasm or slight rudeness, watching for any sign that he would stop paying attention. But he didn't. No matter how she acted, he remained steady. He didn't chase her. He didn't pressure her. He simply continued to be present, listening, observing, and respecting her space. Her life had taught her to be skeptical of people's intentions, and yet she couldn't help but feel curiosity. Why was he different? Why did he seem interested in her fire instead of just the image she presented to the world? She spent hours thinking about it. She wondered if maybe, for the first time, someone could truly see her for who she was, not what she looked like. That thought was both thrilling and frightening. She wasn't sure she knew how to let someone see the real her, the parts that were scared, passionate, stubborn, and proud, all at the same time. As their conversations continued, she began to reveal small pieces of herself. A story from her childhood, a dream she had almost given up on, a fear she rarely admitted aloud. Each time he responded with respect and interest, never judgment, never pity. Slowly, she realized that he wasn't trying to take anything from her. He wasn't trying to own her or change her. He simply valued the energy she carried, the fire that made her who she was. By the end of this first phase of their connection, she started to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time: cautious hope. She knew better than to expect instant trust, but she also knew that there was something rare in this steady presence. She could sense that this man wasn't like others. He didn't want what everyone else wanted. He wasn't drawn only to the surface. And though she still had her walls, for the first time, they didn't feel like walls that had to keep everyone out. They felt like protection she could lower slowly if she chose. Even now, she remembered the small, subtle moments that had made the difference, the way he remembered details she thought she had casually mentioned, the way he laughed genuinely at her jokes without mocking her, the way he respected her silence when she didn't want to talk. These small acts over time built a quiet trust that she hadn't allowed herself to feel for anyone in years, and though she couldn't yet call it love or friendship, she could acknowledge something real. For the first time, she didn't feel like a project to be admired or a body to be desired. She felt like a person whose inner light could be noticed and appreciated without threat. This was the beginning of a journey for her, one where she would have to confront the fears that had shaped her life. She had to learn that not everyone wanted to use or harm her, that not all attention came with hidden motives, and that sometimes people could genuinely value someone's fire, not just their outward appearance. And though she didn't yet know what the future would hold, she felt a spark of something long dormant, the belief that someone might one day care about her for all the right reasons.
He had always been someone who noticed things others overlooked.
While most people were busy judging appearances or rushing to conclusions, he paid attention to small details, the subtleties that revealed who a person truly was. He could tell when someone was pretending to be happy, when a smile was forced, or when a laugh hid nervousness. It wasn't something he bragged about. It was just the way he experienced the world. And when he first met her, he noticed those things immediately. There was something about her presence that drew his attention. Not the obvious parts, like her looks or the way she carried herself. No, it was deeper. He noticed the energy she put into everything she did, the way she moved with confidence but still seemed wary of the world. He saw the tiny cracks in her armor, the glimpses of vulnerability she tried to hide. Most people would have been intimidated or distracted by it, but he felt curious, not threatened. He wanted to understand, to see the person she really was behind all the layers she had built to protect herself. At first, he kept his distance. He didn't want to scare her or seem too forward. He understood that trust could not be rushed. People like her who had been hurt or disappointed before needed patience. They needed to see consistency before they could believe someone's words. He wanted to be that consistent presence, not someone who would come and go like the others. So he observed, he listened, and he respected her space. When they first interacted, she was cautious, guarded, and even a little cold. That didn't surprise him.
He had learned to recognize the signs of someone who had been disappointed by the world.
She asked questions, but not about him. She tested him, subtly, to see if he would respond honestly. Sometimes she would make sarcastic remarks, just to gauge his reaction. He noticed these tests, and he didn't respond with frustration or defensiveness. Instead, he smiled quietly, knowing that her walls were not meant to hurt him. They were simply her way of protecting herself. He admired the fire she carried inside her. It was visible in the way she spoke about her passions, the way she defended her ideas, and the intensity she brought to even small tasks.
Many people would have been intimidated by that energy, but he found it inspiring. He didn't want to control it or tame it.
He wanted to see it flourish, to support it, and to be a witness to it. That was why he stayed patient, even when she seemed distant or skeptical. Over time, he began to engage her in small, meaningful ways. He asked questions that mattered, the kind that showed he was genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. He remembered little details she mentioned in passing, her favorite book, a dream she had shared, a challenge she was facing at work, and he brought them up later, naturally, without making her feel pressured or observed. This careful attention slowly began to break through the wall she had built around herself, though she still remained cautious. He also noticed the moments when she let her guard down, even slightly. A quick laugh when she felt comfortable, a smile when she was genuinely amused, a pause when she considered something deeply. These moments told him more than words ever could. He didn't rush her or try to push her into revealing more than she wanted. He simply acknowledged these glimpses of her true self and respected them. That respect, more than anything, set him apart from the others in her life. One of the things he admired most about her was her honesty.
She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't, even if it made her vulnerable. She would express frustration when she was upset, excitement when she was happy, and doubt when she was uncertain.
He respected that bravery. Many people would hide these emotions to appear perfect or to avoid conflict, but she faced them openly.
He didn't judge her for it. He valued it. He saw it as a sign of strength, a fire that could not be extinguished.
He also recognized her fears. He could see that she had been hurt before, that she had learned to distrust people's intentions.
He didn't see those fears as flaws. He saw them as part of her story, part of what made her resilient and passionate. He wanted her to know, without needing to be told, that he wasn't like those who had disappointed her in the past.
He wanted her to feel safe, to know that his interest was genuine and unconditional, focused on who she was rather than what she looked like. Their conversations began to deepen. She would share her thoughts about her dreams and ambitions, sometimes hesitantly, sometimes with bursts of passion. He would listen, sometimes asking questions that encouraged her to think more deeply, but never pushing. When she spoke about her fears, he offered support without pity. He was careful to validate her feelings while letting her see that she could be strong and independent. Slowly, she began to recognize that he was different, that his attention wasn't shallow, and his intentions weren't self-serving. He noticed the subtle changes in her behavior as their connection grew. She laughed more freely in his presence, her sarcasm softened, and she occasionally let him see her vulnerable side without retreating immediately. These were small victories, but they mattered immensely. He understood that trust was built through consistent actions, not grand gestures. Being patient, respectful, and attentive was his way of showing her that she could rely on him, that her fire could exist without being consumed or judged. He also began to notice his own feelings. He didn't desire her because of appearances or charm. He was drawn to her energy, her resilience, and her unwavering determination. He admired her courage to face challenges head-on, even when she doubted herself. He wanted to be part of her life not as someone who possessed her, but as someone who supported her, someone who could witness her growth and stand beside her in both struggles and triumphs. Through all this, he never rushed. He didn't try to force closeness or demand emotional intimacy. Instead, he let the bond develop naturally, slowly, with patience and understanding. He knew that the strongest connections were built over time, through consistency, shared experiences, and mutual respect. By showing her that he valued her mind, her passions, and her fire, he demonstrated a kind of admiration that went beyond superficial attraction. There were moments of doubt, of course. He wondered if she would ever let him in completely, if she would ever truly trust someone with her heart. But he remained confident that genuine patience and respect would make a difference. He believed that people could change their expectations if someone showed them what genuine care and attention looked like. He didn't see his patience as waiting for a reward. He saw it as a way to honor her, to acknowledge her worth, and to let her know that she could be seen fully without compromise. As days turned into weeks, she began to notice that he was different too. The way he didn't react to her tests, the way he noticed details that no one else remembered, and the way he respected her boundaries. All of it built a subtle but powerful trust. She didn't have to tell him about her fears or explain her walls. He seemed to understand them instinctively. This made her curious, but it also made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in years. By the end of this period, a quiet connection had been formed. It wasn't a grand romance yet, nor was it a deep friendship. It was something in between, a bond that acknowledged each other's strengths, vulnerabilities, and individuality. She began to see him not as someone who wanted something from her, but as someone who valued the fire within her. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine the possibility of trust, the possibility of connection, and the possibility of being understood for who she truly was. He, on the other hand, continued to watch her with quiet admiration, never rushing, always patient. He knew the journey was just beginning, but he also knew that this was rare, a chance to connect with someone whose fire he didn't want to dim, whose strength he didn't want to control. And that understanding became the foundation for everything that would come next. By now, they had spent months getting to know each other in small but meaningful ways. The trust between them had grown slowly, carefully, like a tiny flame that had been shielded from strong winds. She felt safe around him in ways she hadn't felt with anyone else. Yet, old fears were not so easily silenced. She had been hurt before, disappointed before, and taught herself that admiration often hid selfish motives. The idea that someone could truly value her for her energy, her ideas, her fire, rather than just her appearance, felt almost impossible to believe. One evening, after a long day, she felt the weight of everything she had been holding inside her. Work had been stressful. Old memories had surfaced, and the loneliness she often tried to ignore pressed against her chest. She invited him over, though part of her wondered why. She knew she could remain closed and guarded, as she usually did, but something about his steady presence made her feel she could try, at least for a little while, to speak honestly. They sat together in silence at first. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the heater, the occasional creak of the floorboards, and the muted sounds of the world outside. She had rehearsed words in her head, sentences she had repeated like a mantra, warning herself to be cautious. But now, as she looked at him, she realized that rehearsed words couldn't contain what she was feeling. She felt a mixture of fear, frustration, and a deep longing to be truly understood. Finally, the words came out, more sharply than she intended. "You want me for my body," she said, her voice trembling slightly. You just want what everyone else wants." It wasn't a statement of fact. It was a question, a test, and a confession all at once. She looked at him, searching for signs of rejection, for disappointment, for something that would confirm her worst fears. He didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. Instead, he looked at her calmly, with an intensity that wasn't threatening but comforting. There was no judgment in his eyes, no impatience in his tone. He waited for her to finish speaking, allowing her words to spill out without interruption. And when the silence settled after her confession, he leaned forward just slightly, enough that she felt his presence without feeling crowded. "I don't want your body," he whispered, softly but firmly. "I want your fire, not your flesh." The words landed like a gentle weight on her chest. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. For years, she had been taught to measure her worth by her appearance, to assume that attraction always had selfish motives, and to expect admiration to be shallow. Hearing him say that he valued her energy, her passion, her drive, shook something inside her. She wanted to believe him, but old habits die hard. "You say that now," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "But people always say things like that. They say it, but they don't mean it." "They always leave." Her words were a mixture of fear and defense. She was used to disappointment. She was used to people fading away after showing interest in only a part of her. He reached out carefully, not to touch her but to indicate that he was present and attentive. "I know you've been hurt before," he said gently. "I know people have made you feel like your value is only what can be seen on the surface. But I've been paying attention to the parts of you that most people ignore, the parts that make you who you are." "I want that."
I want your thoughts, your passions, your courage, your struggles, everything that makes you real, not just the parts you think everyone notices first." She stared at him, her chest tightening.
She wanted to believe him, yet she had learned that words were cheap. Actions, she knew, were what truly mattered. But something in the way he spoke, the calmness of his voice, and the sincerity in his eyes made her want to try. She wanted to take the risk, even though it scared her deeply. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she could breathe without holding herself together in a protective mask. She had spent so long assuming that admiration was always conditional, that connection always had strings attached.
And yet here he was, offering attention, respect, and understanding without asking for anything in return. The idea that someone could see her fully, without trying to own her or diminish her, was both foreign and liberating.
The room remained quiet, the only sounds being the gentle rhythm of their breathing. She felt a tension inside her slowly unraveling. Part of her wanted to run, to retreat back into her defenses, but another part, a part she had tried to ignore for years, wanted to trust. She realized that this moment, this conversation, was a turning point. She didn't have to give herself completely yet, but she could choose to let herself be seen a little more than before.
I don't know if I can believe that, she admitted, her voice softening.
I've been hurt too many times. I've let people in, and it didn't end well.
How can I know you're different? He smiled, not in arrogance, but with understanding.
You can't know yet, and that's okay.
I don't expect you to. I only ask that you watch, that you see how I treat you, not just what I say. I'm not perfect, and I don't expect perfection from you. But I will respect you, always. I will not take advantage of you, and I will not diminish your fire. I want to see it shine, and I want to be someone you can rely on, even in the small things.
Her eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and cautious hope.
He wasn't promising her the world. He wasn't trying to sweep her off her feet with grand declarations.
He was offering something simpler, yet more profound. Respect, attention, and patience. That was new to her. She had spent so long believing that admiration was always fleeting, that connection was always conditional. He was proving her wrong, gently, without force. They sat together for a long time after that, speaking in low voices, sharing pieces of themselves that they hadn't before. She revealed small truths about her childhood, her dreams, and her fears. He listened. Not with the intent to fix, but with the intent to understand. Each time she spoke, he validated her feelings and experiences, making her realize that her fire was something worthy of attention, not something to be judged or consumed. By the end of the night, she felt a shift inside her.
The walls she had built around herself didn't vanish, but they softened. She began to believe, even if just a little, that someone could value her for her true self, not just the surface.
She realized that the bond they were forming wasn't built on attraction alone. It was built on recognition, respect, and genuine interest in each other's inner world.
He, for his part, remained patient, understanding the significance of the moment.
He didn't rush her into saying more than she was ready to say. He didn't demand that she trust him completely. He simply offered his presence, his words, and his actions as proof that he wanted her fire, not just her appearance. And that steady, patient approach laid the foundation for something rare and beautiful, a connection based on mutual respect, admiration, and trust. As she left that night, she felt a mixture of relief and cautious hope. She realized that she had been given something few people ever experienced, the chance to be seen fully without fear of exploitation or judgment. And though she still carried the scars of her past, she understood that it was possible for someone to value her for her fire, her energy, her passion, and her courage, not just for the way she looked or the image she presented to the world. That night marked the beginning of a deeper chapter in their story. It was the moment when words met action, when patience met fire, and when cautious hope began to take root in her heart. And though the journey ahead would still have challenges, fears, and tests, she knew that for the first time in a long while, someone saw her as she truly was, and that someone wanted to cherish her fire, not consume it. After that evening, something in her began to shift. The words he had whispered, I want your fire, not your flesh, echoed in her mind for days. At first, she tried to dismiss them, telling herself that she had heard such promises before. But unlike other people, he hadn't just spoken. He had shown her through his actions that his words were genuine. He didn't push for closeness. He didn't demand explanations. Instead, he quietly continued to respect her space while showing care in small, meaningful ways. She noticed the little things first. When she spoke about something important to her, he remembered it days later. He celebrated her small victories without making a show of it. He offered help without making her feel incapable. Even when she failed or stumbled, he didn't judge or criticize. Instead, he acknowledged her effort and encouraged her to try again. These acts, though subtle, built a foundation of trust stronger than any grand gesture could have. Her friends began to notice the change in her. She laughed more freely around him, her sarcasm softened, and she started sharing small stories she had previously kept to herself. At first, she felt guilty for lowering her guard, wondering if she was being naive or if she would soon regret it. But every time she hesitated, he responded with patience. He didn't press her for explanations or demand that she trust him instantly. He simply continued to be present, quietly proving that he could be relied on. One afternoon, she had a particularly stressful day at work. Everything seemed to go wrong, from a misunderstanding with a colleague to a last-minute change in a project she had spent weeks preparing. Frustration and self-doubt gnawed at her, and she found herself snapping at minor irritations, even at herself. When she finally met him that evening, she expected a quick word of comfort and then a retreat into solitude, as she usually did with others. But he did something different. He didn't try to fix the situation or dismiss her feelings. Instead, he listened. He let her vent, letting her words pour out without interruption. He acknowledged the stress she felt, validating her emotions without judgment. And then, gently, he reminded her of her strengths, of the fire she carried inside her that had helped her overcome challenges before. "You've faced difficult days before," he said softly, "and you've survived, grown, and come out stronger every time. This day won't be different." Those words weren't magical. They didn't erase the stress of the day. But they did something more important. They made her feel seen, understood, and supported. For the first time in a long while, she realized that someone could care about her struggles without trying to take control, without demanding that she change, and without treating her vulnerability as a weakness. That kind of support was rare, and it made her start to trust him in ways she hadn't thought possible. Over the following weeks, she noticed a pattern. Whenever she faced challenges, he was there, not as a savior, but as a steady presence. He celebrated her successes quietly, but sincerely. He listened when she doubted herself. He respected her decisions, even when he thought she might be too hard on herself. Slowly, she began to internalize a new understanding. That trust didn't require perfection. That connection didn't demand surrender, and that support could be offered without strings attached. One evening, as they walked together through a quiet park, she admitted something she had never shared with anyone before. A fear she carried about being abandoned, about people leaving once they got what they wanted. Her voice shook slightly as she spoke, but he didn't interrupt. He simply walked beside her, matching her pace, and waited until she had finished. Then he said, "I understand. And I promise you I'm not here to leave. I'm here because I want to be, because I value who you are, not because I need something from you." Those words, paired with his consistent actions over time, made a deeper impression than any grand statement ever could. She began to realize that trust was not a single decision. It was a series of experiences, moments, and choices that accumulated over time. And he was showing her, day by day, that he could be trusted. The more she allowed herself to rely on him, the more her walls softened. She began to share her thoughts and feelings more openly, trusting that he would respond with respect and understanding. She revealed her dreams, her frustrations, and even her small insecurities, and he responded with care, encouragement, and validation, never judgment. This mutual understanding created a safe space where she could express herself fully, without fear of being misunderstood or exploited. There were still moments of doubt. She would sometimes catch herself expecting him to act like others had in the past, fearing that his attention might be fleeting or conditional. But each time he proved her wrong. His actions remained consistent. He didn't vanish when life got busy. He didn't withdraw when she made mistakes. He continued to show patience, support, and respect, slowly teaching her that her fire was not something to hide. It was something to nurture and share. Through these shared experiences, she began to feel a sense of freedom she hadn't known before. She realized that being vulnerable didn't have to mean being weak. Sharing her fears, her dreams, and her passions didn't make her less herself. It made her more herself. And having someone who saw that, who appreciated it, and who encouraged it, was transformative. One day, while they were sitting together after a long walk, she turned to him and said quietly, "I never thought anyone would see me like this."
Really see me?
He looked at her with a soft smile and replied,
You've always been seen by the right people, even if it didn't feel like it. I'm just glad you're letting me be one of them. That simple exchange marked a turning point.
She understood that connection wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was about consistency, care, and respect. About someone showing up for you, day after day, without expecting anything in return. She began to feel a quiet confidence in their bond, trusting that her fire could exist without fear of being consumed or judged. As the weeks turned into months, this trust continued to grow. She began to notice subtle changes in herself. She laughed more freely. She spoke more openly. She allowed herself to dream again, knowing that someone was there who valued her for who she was, not just for the surface she presented to the world. Her energy, once guarded and wary, began to shine in ways she hadn't expected. And each time she shared a piece of herself, he responded with encouragement, understanding, and respect, reinforcing the safe space he had helped create. She also began to understand that trust was not one-sided. He had shown her patience, consistency, and care, but he also trusted her with his own thoughts, feelings, and vulnerabilities. Their connection deepened because it was mutual. They were not just sharing experiences, they were witnessing each other's growth and supporting it. This mutual respect created a bond stronger than attraction alone, one built on understanding, patience, and genuine care. Through all of this, she realized something important. True connection didn't demand perfection. It didn't require hiding fears or pretending to be someone else. It thrived on authenticity, on shared understanding, and on consistent, respectful actions. And in him, she had found someone who embodied all of that, a presence she could rely on without fear, a partner who valued her fire above all else. By the end of this period, she no longer questioned whether someone could truly care for her inner self. She had felt it, experienced it, and witnessed it in countless small actions that spoke louder than words. She understood now that her fire was not only visible but cherished, and that trust could be built through patience, respect, and shared experiences. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. She knew the journey was not over. Life would still present challenges and fears would still surface, but she also knew that she could face them with someone by her side who valued her for her true self. And that understanding, that quiet yet powerful recognition, became the foundation for everything that would follow. Over time, she began to notice how much she had changed. The cautious, guarded person she had once been was still there, but it had softened. Slowly, the walls she had built to protect herself were no longer obstacles. They were reminders of her resilience. She had learned that vulnerability didn't have to mean weakness, and that trust, once earned, could be a source of strength rather than fear. And he had been there through all of it, not rushing her, not demanding anything, simply showing that her fire could exist and be appreciated fully. One quiet evening, they found themselves sitting together by the window, the world outside painted in shades of gold from the setting sun. She was tired from a long day, her mind filled with worries about work, family, and the little challenges life seemed to always present. But unlike before, she felt a calm presence beside her, someone who didn't judge her exhaustion or belittle her stress. She realized almost suddenly that she could lean on him without guilt, without fear of being seen as weak. "You know," she began softly, I never thought anyone could see me like this. Really see me. And still want to be near me." He smiled, quiet but warm, the kind of smile that made her feel understood without needing an explanation. "I've been seeing you all along," he replied gently. "Not just the confident, strong parts, but the doubts, the fears, the little things you hide from the world. And I like all of it. I want all of it. That's who you are. That's your fire." She looked at him, surprised at the simplicity and honesty of his words. It was different from anything she had experienced before. People had admired her confidence, her appearance, her energy, but most had tried to change her, to control her, or to take what they wanted without understanding her. He didn't want to change her. He didn't want to take from her. He only wanted to witness her fire, to be a part of it without dimming it. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to test him. She didn't feel the need to question his intentions. The trust that had been slowly building over months reached a point where it didn't need constant reassurance. She could simply be herself, and he would remain. She realized that this was rare, a connection that was built on respect, patience, and genuine care rather than appearances or desire. As they continued to talk that evening, she began to share more than she had before, her dreams for the future, the fears she sometimes kept hidden even from herself, and the little victories that made her proud. And he listened, not to respond or correct, but to understand. Each time she spoke, he acknowledged her courage, her determination, and the passion she carried. In his presence, she didn't have to hide her fire. She could let it shine freely, knowing it was safe.
It wasn't always easy. There were still moments when doubt crept in, when old fears whispered that people only stayed till they got what they wanted.
But each time that fear appeared, she remembered his actions, the consistency with which he had treated her, the patience he had shown when she tested him or held back. Slowly, she realized that trust was not about never being afraid. It was about knowing that someone would stand beside you even when fear existed. He, too, had his own moments of reflection. He admired her fire, her courage, and her resilience. He had seen the walls she had built, and he understood that they were not weaknesses but shields that protected a valuable, passionate soul. His admiration was not fleeting. It was steady, consistent, and patient. He knew that true connection required respect and understanding, and he had devoted himself to showing her that she could rely on him without compromising who she was.
Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Their bond strengthened, not through dramatic confessions or grand gestures, but through countless small moments. Sharing laughter, supporting each other through challenges, listening without judgment, and celebrating each other's successes. Every act, no matter how small, reinforced the foundation of trust and mutual respect they had built together. One afternoon, she found herself reflecting on how far she had come.
She remembered the fear she had felt when she first suspected he might be like everyone else, when she believed that admiration always came with selfish motives. And now, sitting beside him, she realized how wrong she had been. He hadn't tried to control her, change her, or use her. He had simply valued her for who she was, for her fire, her energy, her passion, and her strength. She looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and a newfound calm. "I think I understand now," she said softly.
I've been afraid for so long, afraid that no one could see me and still stay. But you see me, and you choose to be here. And that makes all the difference.
He reached out and took her hand, a gentle gesture that spoke volumes.
You don't have to be afraid anymore,
he said quietly.
I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. Your fire is beautiful, and I want to be a part of it. Not to control it, not to change it, but to support it and witness it.
For the first time, she allowed herself to truly believe it. She felt a warmth inside, a quiet joy that came not from being admired for her appearance, but from being valued for her essence, her energy, and her spirit.
It was a freedom she had longed for, a validation of her worth that went beyond surface-level attention. From that point on, their connection deepened naturally.
She shared more of herself without fear, and he continued to respond with care, patience, and understanding. They supported each other through everyday challenges, celebrated small victories, and nurtured each other's dreams.
Their bond was built on respect, shared experiences, and a mutual recognition of the value of inner strength. She realized that being seen fully was a gift she hadn't expected to receive in her life.
The fire she had once hidden, fearing that it would drive people away or be used against her, now burned brightly in his presence. And he didn't just accept it. He cherished it, encouraged it, and helped it grow. One evening, as they watched the sunset together, she felt a profound sense of peace. She thought about the months that had led them here, about the fears she had confronted, the walls she had lowered, and the trust she had learned to place in someone else. And she knew that this connection was rare, built not on fleeting desire, but on a deep appreciation of each other's true selves. She turned to him and smiled, a smile filled with both relief and hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me, for staying, for wanting my fire and not just my appearance." He smiled back, his eyes warm and steady.
"And thank you," he replied. "Thank you for letting me see it, for trusting me, and for sharing it. Your fire is extraordinary, and being part of it is an honor." In that moment, she felt complete, not in the sense that life was perfect, but in the sense that she was understood, valued, and safe.
Her fire no longer needed to be hidden or restrained. It could shine freely, and she could trust that it would not be consumed, judged, or diminished.
Their story was not about dramatic events or sudden transformations. It was about quiet, steady growth, about the way trust and understanding build over time.
It was about two people recognizing each other's worth, supporting each other's strengths, and learning that true connection is built on respect, patience, and shared experiences. As she reflected on their journey, she understood that her fire, once guarded, fearful, and hidden, was now a source of strength, joy, and connection. And in his steady presence, she found not only companionship, but also a mirror for her own growth and courage. She knew that life would still have challenges, but she also knew that together they could face them with trust, understanding, and love that respected both their individual fires. And in that understanding, in that quiet, mutual recognition, they found something rare and beautiful, a bond that celebrated the true essence of who they were, a bond that honored her fire, and a connection that promised trust, respect, and unwavering presence in each other's lives.